The night was heavy with silence, broken only by the hum of a neon sign flickering above the gas station. In the far corner of the lot, Sarah clutched 8 wrinkled dollars in her hand, the only money she had left. Tomorrow, it was supposed to buy her daughter's breakfast. And then she heard it. A choking gasp. A man, leather jacket, massive frame, tattoos crawling up his neck, crumpled beside his motorcycle. His face had turned a frightening shade of grey. He was dying right there on the cracked asphalt. "Don't get involved," the gas station clerk yelled from the doorway. "Those bikers are nothing but trouble." Sarah froze, heart pounding, $8 in her palm, her daughter Nancy's face in her mind. Hungry tomorrow or alive tonight? She didn't think twice. She ran inside, handed over her last bills for aspirin and water, and dropped to her knees beside the stranger. With trembling hands, she saved his life. What she didn't know was that the man she saved wasn't just any biker, and the choice she made on that pavement would change everything. Before that night. At 5 a.m. that morning, Sarah's alarm had screamed her awake like it did every day. She rolled out of bed in the cramped one-bedroom apartment she shared with 6-year-old Nancy. The paint on the walls was peeling, the floor creaked with every step, but it was theirs. She opened the cupboard. One nearly empty cereal box, half a carton of milk in the fridge. She poured what was left into Nancy's bowl, stretching it thin. "Morning, Mummy," Nancy mumbled, rubbing her eyes. "Morning, baby." Sarah kissed the crown of her daughter's head, setting the bowl in front of her. She didn't make one for herself. There wasn't enough. There was never enough. This was life now, measuring every dollar, praying nothing unexpected would happen. No car, no safety net. Rent was 3 days away, and she was $150 short. The electricity bill, taped to the fridge, had turned into an urgent warning. Nancy's asthma inhaler was running out, another $60 she didn't have. But Sarah didn't complain. Complaints didn't pay the bills. Her grandmother's words followed her everywhere. Kindness costs nothing, baby. And sometimes it's all we have left to give. So she smiled at her co-workers. She asked strangers how their day was going, even when her body screamed with exhaustion. And every night, no matter how bad it had been, she wrote 3 things she was grateful for in a small journal by her bed. The double life of survival mornings belonged to the laundromat, where she folded endless piles of other people's jeans and towels for $11 an hour. Evenings, she tied on an apron at a diner, pouring coffee for truckers and teenagers. Tips could mean $20 if she was lucky. Her car had broken down weeks ago, so she walked. Miles in worn-out sneakers, the sole splitting beneath her left foot. That Tuesday, like all the others, she dropped Nancy off with the neighbour before school and trudged to the laundromat. 8 hours of folding on autopilot. Jeans, sheets, towels, repeat. By 2 p.m, she was on her way to the diner. Her shift didn't start until 3, but she always came early, her one ritual. A cup of coffee in the back booth, 10 quiet minutes to herself. Kimberly, her longtime co-worker, slid into the booth. Her warm, lined face studied Sarah. "You look tired, honey." "I'm always tired," Sarah whispered with a tired smile. "You work yourself to death for that little girl," Kimberly said softly, squeezing her hand. "She's worth it." "I know she is," Kimberly sighed, "but you got to take care of yourself too." But they both knew Sarah didn't have that luxury. That night, the diner was busy. Truckers, families, restless kids wanting fries at 10 p.m. Sarah smiled through it, her feet burning, her back screaming. By the time she counted her tips in the break room, she had $23. She lined up the bills carefully on the table. $23 from tonight, $8.47 left over from yesterday, $31.47 total. Rent was still short. The numbers didn't add up. And yet, just hours later, she would spend every last cent on a stranger's life. Sarah had counted the money twice. $8, just enough for Nancy's breakfast tomorrow, maybe a little left over for dinner. She folded the bills carefully, tucked them into her pocket, and started the long walk home. The streets were empty. The hour was late. Her body ached, but she kept her chin up and kept moving. 2 miles stood between her and the apartment. She decided to cut through the gas station lot. A shortcut and a chance to use the restroom. That's where the night changed. The moment. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a sickly glow on the cracked asphalt. It was just past 11 p.m. when Sarah stepped back outside and noticed him. A giant of a man leaned against a gleaming motorcycle, his leather vest stitched with patches and a skull logo that needed no introduction. Hell's Angels. He had a thick grey beard, tattooed arms, and the kind of presence that made people cross the street. Every story Sarah had ever heard about men like him flashed in her head. Dangerous, criminal, violent. She kept her eyes forward and picked up her pace. Then his hand flew to his chest, his face twisted in pain. He staggered, dropped to one knee, then collapsed flat on the pavement. His breath came in ragged bursts, then stopped altogether. His lips turned blue. Sarah froze. Every instinct screamed, "Walk away. Don't do this. You have a daughter to think about." But she couldn't move, because she knew this silence too well. When she was 12, her grandmother had collapsed on a busy sidewalk. A stroke. People walked past. No one stopped. By the time help arrived, it was too late. Sarah had carried that memory like a scar. Now, here was this man, alone, dying, his chest no longer rising. And Sarah was the only one standing between him and death. No help coming. "Hey!" she shouted toward the gas station. "Call 911. Somebody help." The attendant, a white man in his 30s, with a cigarette dangling from his lips, sauntered outside. He glanced at the man on the ground, then at Sarah. "You're crazy, lady. That's a Hell's Angel. Leave him. He's probably high." "He's having a heart attack," Sarah snapped, panic rising in her throat. The clerk shrugged. "Not our problem. You don't want to get mixed up with them." Just then, an older man, 60s, trucker hat, bag of chips in hand, walked past. He took one look, shook his head and muttered, "Miss, don't. Guys like that, they're trouble. You've got a kid, right? I can tell. Just go home." He even touched her arm gently, as if to steer her away. Sarah yanked free. "A man is dying," the trucker muttered under his breath, climbed into his pickup and drove off without another glance. The clerk retreated inside, and just like that, she was alone with him. The night so still, so merciless, it pressed down on her. The choice. She knelt beside him. "Sir, can you hear me?" His eyelids fluttered, his voice a faint rasp. "Heart meds. Forgot." Her hand shook as she pulled out her phone. 1 bar, 10% battery. She dialed 911. The call dropped. "Damn it!" She bolted into the gas station, adrenaline surging. "Call an ambulance now, he's dying!" she shouted. The attendant rolled his eyes, but finally picked up the landline. Sarah didn't wait. She scanned the shelves like a soldier on a mission, snatched a bottle of aspirin and water, and slammed them on the counter. "How much?" $6.50. Her stomach dropped. Nancy's breakfast. The only money she had left. She pulled the 8 crumpled dollars from her pocket and shoved them across the counter. The clerk handed her back $1.50 in change. She didn't take the receipt. She didn't look back. She sprinted into the night with aspirin and water in her hands, heading for the man who had no breath left in his chest. The man lay sprawled on the asphalt, his chest barely moving, his face the colour of ash. Sarah's hands trembled as she twisted open the aspirin bottle. 2 tablets rattled into her palm. "Hey, look at me," she said, crouching low. "Chew these. Now." His lips parted weakly. She slipped the tablets onto his tongue, coaxing him until his jaw moved. Slowly, painfully, she pressed the water bottle to his mouth. He took a shallow sip, eyes fluttering. "Help's coming," she whispered, her hand steady on his shoulder, though her heart was racing. "Stay with me. Just stay." His fingers brushed hers, the faintest grip of a man slipping away. "What's your name?" His voice rasped like broken glass. "Sarah, Sarah." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Sarah, you saved me." Not yet, she said firmly, but I'm trying. And then, in the distance, sirens split the silence. The arrival. The rumble of another engine roared into the lot. A second motorcycle, sleek and loud, cut through the night. A younger man, maybe 30, leapt off the bike. His vest bore the same patches. His face went pale. "Joshua! Oh my God!" He dropped to his knees beside the fallen man. He looked across at Sarah, stunned. You helped him." "He needed help," she answered simply. For a moment, he just stared at her, as if she had done something no one else on earth would have dared. "Most people cross the street when they see us." Sarah didn't reply. She only kept her hand pressed to Joshua's shoulder until the ambulance screamed into the lot. Paramedics swarmed with a stretcher. One glanced at Sarah. "Did you give him aspirin?" "Yes, 2 tablets, maybe 3 minutes ago." The medic's eyes sharpened with approval. "Smart. You probably just saved his life." They lifted Joshua onto the stretcher. His hand shot out weakly, fingers clutching Sarah's wrist. His eyes, still burning beneath the exhaustion, locked onto hers. "Tell them, Joshua sent you." She had no idea what that meant. The promise. The younger biker stood as the ambulance doors slammed shut. He reached into his wallet and handed her a plain white card. No name, no title, only a phone number stamped beneath a logo of a crown with wings. "My name's Stephen," he said. His voice carried both weight and sincerity. "Joshua will want to thank you. Call this number tomorrow." Sarah turned the card over in her hand, her fingers shaking. "Who is he?" Stephen exhaled slowly, his jaw tight. "Someone important. Someone who never forgets kindness." Their ambulance tore away into the night. The gas station clerk leaned in the doorway, arms folded, watching with a smirk as if waiting for her to regret it. Sarah just stood there, her pocket lighter by $6.50, her heart still thundering, and no idea what she had set in motion. The weight of gratitude. As paramedics worked on Joshua inside the ambulance, Stephen paced the lot like a caged animal. His hands raked through his hair, panic carved into his face. "Is he going to be okay?" he demanded. One of the medics looked up. "We got him stable, but if she hadn't given him aspirin when she did..." Different story. Stephen's eyes turned red. He looked at Sarah like she had performed a miracle. "You don't understand. Joshua, he's not just anybody. He's everything to us." Sarah swallowed hard, unsure what to say. "I just did what anyone would." Stephen shook his head almost angrily. "No, most people would have walked away, especially from him." Before the doors closed, Joshua pulled his oxygen mask down. His lips formed one word. "Thank you." She nodded once. That was all. The sirens faded into the night, leaving Stephen staring after them. Then he turned back to Sarah. "You got kids?" The question caught her off guard. "Yeah, a daughter, Nancy, she's 6. "What's your situation? You working?" Sarah hesitated. Why was she even answering? But there was something in the way he asked. Not prying, not judging. Just human. 2 jobs. We're managing." Stephen's gaze dropped to her shoes, the hole in the left sole, her tired face, the worn-out denim. He nodded, slow and quiet, like he was taking in the truth of her life. "Yeah," he said at last, voice low. "I bet." Then he reached into his wallet. It bulged with cash. He started counting bills. Stephen pulled a thick stack of cash from his wallet, thumbing through bills like it was nothing. "Let me give you something," he said, "for the aspirin, for your time, for what you did." Sarah stepped back, shaking her head. "No, please. I said no." Her voice was firm, steadier than she felt. He froze, studying her. "Then, why?" "Because he needed help," she said simply. "That's all." Stephen slid the wallet back into his pocket. For a long moment, he just looked at her, as if trying to memorize the face of someone he couldn't quite believe was real. Then he reached into his vest and pulled out the same plain white card, crown with wings, a single phone number. Joshua's going to want to thank you himself, Stephen said quietly. Tomorrow. Please, call this number. Sarah took it, intending to toss it in the trash as soon as she got home. I'll think about it. Please, he said again, and this time his voice carried something unexpected. Not command, not pressure, but almost desperation. Just call, that's all I'm asking. She slipped the card into her pocket with a nod. Stephen climbed onto his bike, paused, and looked back one last time. You're a good person, Sarah. Don't let anyone ever tell you otherwise. Then the engine roared to life, and he was gone. Alone in the night. The gas station lights buzzed above her like angry bees. The lot was empty now. Too quiet. Everything felt unreal, like she'd walked through some dream that had spit her back out with only $1.50 in her pocket. She started the 2-mile trek home under the dark sky, her mind racing. Who was Joshua? Why had Stephen looked at her as if she'd done the impossible? She hadn't. She just helped a man. But the way they reacted, it was like kindness was something foreign, like no one had ever stopped for them before. The clerk's warning echoed in her mind. Those guys are nothing but trouble. The trucker's voice too. Walk away. Maybe they were right. Maybe tonight was a mistake. But then she pictured Joshua again, grey-faced, chest still, lips blue. If she'd walked away, he would be dead. And she didn't know how to regret saving a life. The quiet moments. It was nearly 1 a.m. when she slipped through her apartment door. Mrs. Michelle, the kind neighbour who watched Nancy when Sarah worked late, had dozed off on the couch with Nancy curled beside her. Thank you, Sarah whispered, waking her gently. Mrs. Michelle smiled, nodded groggily, and shuffled back to her own apartment. Sarah lifted Nancy, small and warm in her arms, and carried her to bed. Mommy? The little girl murmured. Shh, go back to sleep, baby. I love you, Mommy. Sarah kissed her forehead. I love you too. In the kitchen, she dropped into the chair at the small table. She pulled out the business card and set it under the dim bulb. The crown with wings gleamed faintly. She turned it over. Blank on the back. Just a number. Just a door into a world she didn't understand. The $1.50 in change sat beside it. Tomorrow, she would have to tell Nancy. Breakfast was crackers and the last banana. Her chest ached at the thought. She reached for her journal, the notebook her grandmother had taught her to keep. 3 things, every night, no matter what. She wrote slowly. Nancy is healthy. I helped someone tonight. Tomorrow is a new day. She closed the journal, placed the card on her nightstand, and crawled into bed. Exhaustion dragged her under. She had no idea that across the city, Joshua was awake in a hospital bed, telling Stephen to gather everyone. No idea that her name had already begun to spread in rooms she'd never seen. No idea that her life was about to shift forever. All Sarah knew was this: she had done the right thing. And sometimes that's all a person can do, even when it costs them everything. At 5 a.m, her alarm screamed again, just like always. And Sarah got up. The kitchen was almost bare. 1 banana, a few crackers. That was it. Sarah split the banana in half, laid the crackers neatly on a plate, and poured a glass of water as though presentation might make up for the emptiness. Nancy padded in, her hair messy from sleep, pyjamas bunched at the knees. Morning, Mummy. What's for breakfast? A special one today, baby. Sarah forced a bright smile. Banana and crackers, your favourite. Nancy nodded happily and climbed into her chair. She never complained. She just ate. Sarah didn't make a plate for herself. There wasn't enough. She sat across the table, watching her daughter chew, trying not to think about the empty cabinet behind her, trying not to think about the $8 she'd spent on a stranger. Then came the knock. It was barely 7 a.m. Who would be knocking this early? The warning. Mrs. Carroll stood in the doorway, arms crossed, her expression heavy with disapproval. She'd lived on this block longer than anyone, a woman in her 60s with eyes that missed nothing. See, baby, she said, her voice tight. We need to talk. Sarah straightened. Good morning, Mrs. Carroll. Is everything okay? I heard about last night. The older woman leaned closer, lowering her voice. Heard you helped one of those biker thugs. A Hell's Angel. Sarah's stomach sank. How could word have spread so fast? He was having a heart attack, she said quietly. I couldn't just... Mrs. Carroll cut her off. Child, those men are criminals. Drugs, guns, violence. You got a daughter to raise. What were you thinking? He was a human being who needed help. That's all I saw. Mrs. Carroll shook her head, disappointment etched into every line of her face. You're too kind for your own good, Sarah. And one day, that kindness is going to get you hurt. Mark my words. She turned and walked away, leaving Sarah in the doorway with her hands trembling. Inside, Nancy munched her crackers, blissfully unaware. Sarah closed the door slowly, pressing her back against it. Had she made a mistake? Doubt. At the laundromat, she folded jeans and towels on autopilot, Mrs. Carroll's words circling her head. That kindness will get you hurt. Kimberly, her co-worker, noticed the shadows under her eyes and slid onto the bench beside her. You okay, honey? You look like you haven't slept. Sarah hesitated, then spilled the story. The gas station, the biker, the aspirin, her last $8. Kimberly's jaw dropped. You helped a Hell's Angel? She let out a low whistle. Girl, you're braver than me. Or stupider, Sarah muttered. Kimberly reached across and squeezed her hand. Listen to me. You did what your heart told you. Don't let anybody make you feel bad for that. But what if she's right? Sarah whispered. What if I just invited trouble into my life? Kimberly looked her straight in the eye. You saved a man's life. That's never the wrong thing to do. Sarah wanted to believe her, but doubt gnawed like a silent parasite. The call. On her break, she pulled the white card from her pocket. The crown with wings stared back at her. She turned it over and over between her fingers, her pulse quickening. Before she could lose her nerve, she typed a message. Hi, this is Sarah. Stephen gave me this number. She hit send. Seconds later, her phone rang. Unknown number. Her breath caught. She let it roll to voicemail. The message came through almost instantly. Sarah, it's Stephen. Joshua wants to meet you today. Can you come to Murphy's Diner on 5th Street at 3 p.m? It's important. Please. Her heart slammed in her chest. What is it? Kimberly asked. They want to meet me this afternoon. Kimberly grinned. Then go. Worst that happens, you get a free coffee. Sarah tried to laugh, but her stomach twisted into knots. She was off work at 2. She could make it by 3. But what would people say? And, more terrifying, what if Mrs. Carroll was right? What would Mrs. Carroll say if she saw this? If she knew where Sarah was going? What if all of it, the gas station, the aspirin, the card, had been the worst mistake of her life? That thought gnawed at her as she left the laundromat. But then she noticed them. 2 motorcycles parked across the street. 2 men in leather vests watching. They didn't sneer or threaten, they just nodded, respectful. Then they roared off. Sarah stood frozen on the sidewalk, her heart hammering. What have I stepped into? And can I even step back out? The ride to Murphy's, her hands wouldn't stop trembling as she boarded the bus to 5th Street. Every bump in the road seemed to shake her bones. When the bus turned the corner, her breath caught. Motorcycles, dozens of them. Gleaming chrome lined up in perfect rows outside Murphy's Diner, engines silent but heavy with presence. The afternoon sun bounced off polished tanks like they were waiting for battle. Her stomach dropped to her shoes. The bus hissed to a stop. For a heartbeat, she thought about staying seated, riding all the way past. But something inside her, the same thing that had made her kneel on that gas station pavement, pushed her to stand. 1 step, then another. The sidewalk was lined with bikers, broad-shouldered men, tattooed arms, weathered faces. Women too, tough, proud, arms crossed, all in vests stitched with patches. They weren't rowdy. They weren't jeering. They were waiting. As she walked past, each one nodded. a silent acknowledgement. An older man tipped his cap. Her heart pounded. She didn't understand the ritual, but it felt sacred. Joshua inside, the diner was packed wall to wall with leather vests, every booth, every stool filled, yet the place was silent. When she stepped in, every head turned. Stephen emerged from the back, his expression softer than she'd ever seen. "Sarah," he said, "thank you for coming. Joshua's waiting." As she followed him through the narrow aisle, something extraordinary happened. The bikers rose, one by one, like a wave rolling through the room. Not loud, not aggressive, a solemn gesture of respect. Sarah's throat tightened. She didn't know what it meant, but the weight of it pressed into her bones. Stephen led her to a corner booth. Joshua sat there, paler than the night before, but alive. When he saw her, he struggled to his feet, wincing with the effort. "Sarah," he said, "please, sit." She slid into the booth across from him. "How are you feeling?" she asked quietly. "Doctor says if you hadn't acted fast, I'd be gone," Joshua said. "Heart attack. You saved me." "I'm just glad you're okay." He leaned forward. His gaze was steady, piercing. "Stephen told me everything, that you wouldn't take money, that you've got a daughter, that you gave up your last $8 for me." Sarah shifted uncomfortably. "It wasn't about money." "I know." He reached into his vest and pulled out a worn photograph, sliding it across the table. A younger Joshua stood with a woman at his side. Between them, a little girl, 7 at most, with bright eyes and a smile that could light a city. "That's my daughter," Joshua said, his voice low. "Donna." Sarah's chest ached. "She's beautiful." "She was. Leukemia. She was 7. We couldn't get the treatments in time. By the time we scraped the money together, it was too late." Sarah swallowed hard. "I'm so sorry." Joshua's jaw clenched. His eyes glistened but didn't break. "After she died, I made a promise. Anyone who shows true kindness, especially when they've got nothing, I help them. It's what Donna would have wanted." Sarah couldn't find words. She just sat, stunned. He leaned closer. "Tomorrow morning, something's going to happen. Don't be afraid. Just trust me." "What do you mean?" she asked. Joshua smiled faintly, as though he knew more than he would say. "You'll see." He stood, shook her hand firmly, left cash on the table, and walked out with Stephen. Sarah sat there in silence, surrounded by a sea of leather and steel, more confused than ever. An older biker leaned toward her. "You did good, miss. Real good." But she had no idea what any of it meant. The neighborhood. By evening, her street buzzed with whispers. Mrs. Carroll stood on her porch, arms folded, voice sharp. "That girl, Sarah, she's mixed up with those bikers now. I told her no good would come of it." Mr. Ronald, 3 doors down, frowned. "Hell's angels on our block? We can't allow that." A young mother pulled her child inside. "I'm keeping my kids home tomorrow." Words spread like fire. Curtains closed. Doors locked. Fear thickened the air. And Sarah? She rode the bus home with a pit in her stomach, clutching the business card like a curse and a blessing all at once, wondering if she'd just set something in motion she couldn't undo. The omen. At dawn, Sarah woke to a sound that shook the windows. A low rumble, deep, endless, like thunder rolling down the street. Engines. The sound rattled the glass in the window, a deep, rolling thunder that made the walls tremble. Sarah rushed to the front of the apartment and froze. Her street was lined with motorcycles. Not 10, not 20, hundreds. Chrome glinted in the morning sun, rows of black vests, men and women standing in perfect formation. "Oh my God," she whispered. Nancy ran in, wide-eyed. "Mummy, why are there so many motorcycles?" Sarah had no answer. She grabbed her coat, pulled Nancy close, and stepped outside. The neighborhood turns. The block had come alive, but not with curiosity, with fear. Windows slammed shut, curtains yanked closed. Mothers hurried children inside, whispering warnings. Mrs. Carroll stood on her porch, phone pressed to her ear. Yes, police? There's a gang on our street. Mr. Ronald stormed forward, his face red. Sarah, what did you do? You brought a gang to our homes, where our kids play? Others joined him, voices rising like a wave. You put us all in danger. What were you thinking? I told you, Mrs. Carroll shouted. I warned you. The crowd pressed in, pointing fingers, anger boiling over. Nancy began to cry, burying her face in Sarah's side. Sarah's hand shook. She wrapped her arms around her daughter. It's okay, baby, she whispered, but even she didn't believe it. The reveal. Then, Stephen stepped forward, hands raised, voice calm. Folks, we're not here to cause trouble. Then, why are you here? Mr. Ronald barked. Stephen's voice carried across the crowd. We're here to help one of your own. 2 nights ago, Sarah saved a life. Today, we're here to save hers. A murmur rippled through the crowd. A semi-truck rumbled up, its trailer doors swinging wide. Bikers began unloading boxes. Stephen turned back to the neighbours. My name is Stephen. I am a volunteer with Donna's Legacy, a non-profit that helps struggling families. The man Sarah saved, Joshua, he's our founder. He started Donna's Legacy after losing his daughter to leukemia. In 20 years, we've helped more than 3,000 families, paid medical bills, built homes, saved lives. Skepticism lingered, until Mr. Ronald's eyes went wide. Wait, Donna's Legacy? You helped my cousin Miguel in Detroit. Veteran, PTSD, you paid for his therapy. Stephen nodded. Another voice rose from the crowd. You paid for my son's heart surgery. And my grandmother's house, someone else added. You saved it from foreclosure. Gasps spread through the street. Fear turned to recognition. Recognition to shame. Mrs. Carroll lowered her phone, her voice breaking. Lord, we judged you all wrong. Joshua's words. The crowd parted as Joshua stepped down from the trailer, moving slow but steady. His presence commanded silence. I get it, Joshua said. His voice was gravel, but steady. You see the jackets, the bikes, the ink. You think danger, you think criminal. That's human. He turned and pointed at Sarah. But this woman didn't see that. She didn't see a label or a stereotype. She saw a man dying. She gave her last $8, her daughter's breakfast money, to save my life. The street went still. She didn't know who I was. She didn't care. She just saw a human being. And that's the world I'm trying to build. A world where people see people. An elderly man, Mr. Kenneth, shuffled forward, eyes wet. I judged you by your jacket, not your heart, he said softly. I was wrong. I'm sorry. He extended his hand. Joshua shook it firmly. We all make mistakes, sir. One by one, neighbours stepped forward. Apologies, handshakes, tearful thanks. Ronald turned to Sarah. His voice cracked. I'm sorry I yelled. You were braver than any of us. Sarah could barely speak. Her throat closed, her eyes wet. The gift, Joshua faced her now. You gave me a second chance. Let me give you one. He handed her an envelope. Her hand shook as she opened it. Inside, a check for $25,000. For rent? For medical bills? For whatever you need, Joshua said simply. Her knees nearly buckled. And then he handed her something else. A letter on official letterhead. Donna's Legacy was offering her a job. Community outreach coordinator. Salary, $52,000 a year. Full benefits, health insurance. Start date, 2 weeks. Sarah dropped to the pavement, sobbing. Nancy knelt beside her, touching her arm. Mommy, why are you crying? Happy tears, baby, Sarah whispered. Happy tears. Applause erupted. Some neighbours cried too. Engines revved like a thunderous ovation, echoing down the block. Mrs. Carroll pulled Sarah into her arms. Baby, you showed us all how to be better. I'm sorry for doubting you. Joshua knelt beside her, grimacing through the pain. One more thing. He pulled a set of keys from his pocket. We bought your car back from impound, fully repaired. It's around the corner. Sarah looked up, tears streaking her face, the keys shining in her palm. For the first time in a long time, hope didn't feel impossible. Why? Sarah's voice cracked. Why all of this? Joshua's eyes glistened. His words came low, steady, but full of weight. 20 years ago, my daughter died because we didn't have enough money to save her. I swore no family would ever suffer like that again if I could help it. You gave me your last dollars without hesitation, without asking for anything in return. That's who the world needs. That's who I need. I'm nobody special, Sarah whispered. You're wrong, Joshua said firmly. You're exactly who we've been looking for. Stephen stepped forward. There's more. Come with me. The gifts. He led her to the trailer. Inside were boxes stacked high. Furniture, groceries, clothes, school supplies, even toys. A brand new bed for Nancy. Sarah laughed through tears, joy and disbelief tangling in her chest. This is too much. It's not enough, Joshua said quietly, but it's a start. One by one, the bikers began unloading boxes. And then something extraordinary happened. The neighbours, who had locked their doors in fear only hours ago, stepped forward. Mr. Ronald grabbed a box. Where do you want this? Mrs. Carroll pointed toward the apartment. Careful with that bed. The young mother who had hidden her kids inside now had them helping carry toys. The entire block came alive. Fear melted into action. Prejudice gave way to compassion. A street divided became a street united. Joshua stood beside Sarah as she watched, stunned. Tomorrow, he said, we start planning the community centre. Right here, Clark House, named after you. Sarah shook her head, crying, You can't. I can, and I will. Nancy tugged at her sleeve, holding up a new pink bicycle. Mommy, look, they brought me a bike. Sarah saw her daughter's face, lit with pure joy, unshadowed by fear, and something inside her cracked open. For the first time in years, she felt hope rushing in like sunlight. Thank you, she whispered to Joshua. You already thanked me, he said softly. The night you saw me. Not the vest, not the tattoos. Just me. That's all I needed. A new life. By noon, Sarah's apartment had been reborn. The sagging couch replaced by a sturdy one with soft cushions. The wobbly table gone, in its place a solid dining set. Nancy's mattress on the floor traded for a real bed, with fresh sheets and fluffy pillows. Neighbours and bikers worked side by side, Ronald assembling Nancy's desk, Mrs. Carroll neatly stacking new plates in the cupboards, kids helping unpack boxes of books and toys. Nancy darted from room to room, her laughter bouncing off the walls. Mummy, look, I have a desk, and books, and toys. Sarah stood in the centre of it all, overwhelmed, tears streaming. Joshua lowered himself onto the new couch and patted the cushion beside him. Sit, let's talk. Still in shock, she sat. I want to explain the job, Joshua said, what we'd need from you. I'll do anything, Sarah said, her voice breaking. I just want to help. Joshua smiled. Every month we get hundreds of requests. Single mums, veterans, families who can't afford medical care. I need someone who knows that struggle. Someone who can look into their eyes and see their heart. That's you. That's me, she whispered. That's why you're hired. He slid a folder across the table. Blueprints. A building sketched in careful lines. Sarah's eyes widened. Here, in this neighbourhood? Why not? Joshua said. This is where people need it most. Job training, a food bank, after-school programs for kids like Nancy, a medical clinic, a place for hope. At the top of the blueprint, 2 words, Clark House. Her breath caught. You can't name it after me. You saved my life with your last $8, Joshua said. That's the definition of special. Tears blurred her vision. The family Joshua's tone grew serious. Your job will be to find the people who need help the most. Families like yours. You'll connect them with what we can give. The pain you carried all these years, that's your gift now. That's your superpower. Sarah nodded, sobbing quietly. When do I start? 2 weeks. Long enough to leave your jobs, long enough to breathe. And there's something else. He handed her a benefits packet. Health insurance. Day 1. Covers everything. including Nancy's asthma medication. Her hand shook. Completely? Completely. No copays, no deductibles. You'll never have to choose between her inhaler and groceries again. Sarah broke down, shoulders shaking with sobs. Joshua waited patiently until she could speak. Then he pulled out one last gift. A vest. Not black leather, not patched with skulls, but a simple vest embroidered with the Donner's legacy crown and wings. "You're one of us now," Joshua said. His voice cracked. "Family." Sarah held the vest in her hands, trembling. For the first time in her life, she didn't feel invisible. She felt seen, chosen, loved, and she knew this was only the beginning. Sarah took the vest with trembling hands. She slid it on and caught her reflection in the small mirror hanging on the wall. For a moment, she didn't even recognize herself. Not the exhausted waitress, not the woman scraping pennies together, but someone stronger, someone new. Joshua's voice cut through the moment. "Your first job. Find someone here in this neighborhood who needs help. Use those same instincts that saved me. Then we'll help them together." Sarah didn't have to think long. "Mrs. Rebecca, 3 doors down, she's 80. I've seen her cut her heart pills in half just to stretch them." Joshua smiled. "Then, let's go." Mrs. Rebecca, Sarah, Joshua, and Stephen walked down the block and knocked on the old woman's door. It creaked open, and Mrs. Rebecca peered out, confused. "Sarah, dear? What's going on?" "Mrs. Rebecca, these are friends of mine," Sarah said gently. "We're here to help." They sat together in her tiny living room, faded wallpaper curling at the edges. Joshua explained Donna's legacy. Mrs. Rebecca's eyes welled with tears as she listened. "What do you need most, right now?" Joshua asked, her voice broke. "My heart medication. I can't afford it anymore. I've been cutting the pills in half, but I'm almost out." Without hesitation, Joshua pulled out his phone. "We'll have your prescription filled today. 3 months. No cost to you." Mrs. Rebecca gripped Sarah's hand, her frail fingers trembling. "You did this for me." Sarah smiled through tears. "We did this. Together." As they left, Sarah turned back, her chest tight with a strange mix of joy and disbelief. "This is the best job I'll ever have." Joshua nodded. "I know, because you understand what it means to need help, and now you get to be the one who shows up." Tomorrow, changed back at Sarah's apartment, the celebration carried on. Neighbors laughed alongside bikers. Nancy played on her new bike, shrieking with joy. Music and voices filled the street. For the first time in 3 years, Sarah didn't worry about tomorrow, because tomorrow was no longer a storm to fear. Tomorrow was possibility. Tomorrow was beautiful. The world watches. The next day, someone uploaded a video. Sarah standing in her street, surrounded by hundreds of Hell's Angels. It went viral. The comments came fast. "She's glorifying gang culture. Don't be fooled. Bikers are criminals. This is staged. No way. This is real." Sarah read them all, each one cut. Kimberly called her that night. "Ignore it, honey. They don't know the truth." But the negativity didn't stop. For weeks, the internet questioned her, doubted her. Then something shifted. Families. Donna's legacy had helped began sharing their own stories. A veteran in Ohio. They gave me housing when I had nothing. A single mother in Pennsylvania. They paid for my daughter's surgery. She's alive because of them. An elderly man in Michigan. They saved my home from foreclosure. One story became dozens. Dozens became hundreds. The comments turned. I was wrong about bikers. This is what real charity looks like. Faith in humanity restored. Within a month, Shed Lily's legacy was trending. A new life month 1. Sarah sat at her new desk. A brass nameplate gleamed. Sarah, Community Outreach Coordinator. She made calls, reviewed applications, visited families. Nancy thrived at her new school. Her inhaler was always full, always ready. No more impossible choices between medicine and meals. Month 2. A vacant lot on her block transformed into a construction site. At the groundbreaking for Clark House, Sarah gripped a shovel beside bikers, neighbours, and cameras. "How does it feel to have a community centre named after you?" a reporter asked. Sarah smiled, her voice steady. "It's not about me. It's about what happens when people choose kindness over fear." Month 3. In a coffee shop, Sarah sat across from Edward, a 32-year-old veteran sleeping in his car. She listened, notebook open, compassion in her eyes. She saw him, just as she'd seen Joshua that night in the gas station, just as she had been taught to see people her whole life. For Sarah, the world had changed, not because she won the lottery, not because she found luck, but because she chose kindness when it cost her everything. And in doing so, she discovered that sometimes kindness is the most powerful revolution of all. "Tell me what you need," Sarah asked. Edward stared down at the table, his hands trembling. A place to sleep, a job, a reason to keep going. Within a week, Donna's legacy had placed him in transitional housing and enrolled him in job training. 3 months later, Edward stood before Sarah again, clean shirt, steady eyes, factory badge clipped to his belt. "I've got my own place now, a paycheck, hope." His voice cracked as he shook her hand. "You gave me a second chance." Sarah smiled softly. "No, Edward, you gave yourself a second chance. I just opened the door." The ribbon. Cutting. By month 4, Clark House was ready. At the ribbon cutting, hundreds crowded the lot. Bikers in leather vests stood shoulder to shoulder with neighbours, children balanced on their parents' shoulders, balloons swaying in the wind. Sarah and Nancy held the scissors together, laughing as they cut the ribbon. Inside, the centre buzzed with life. A job training room, a food bank, after-school programs with books and art supplies, a medical clinic offering free checkups. On opening day, 43 people walked in seeking help. All 43 left with something they needed. Stories of change. Month 5, the testimonials poured in. Rosa, a Latina mother of 3. Donna's legacy paid for my daughter's surgery. Without them, I would have lost her. Mr. Kenneth, the elderly man who once judged Joshua by his jacket. They paid my property taxes. I get to keep my home. A teenage girl, 16, with college dreams. The after-school program helped me earn a scholarship. I'm going to be a doctor. By month 6, Sarah led a team of 5 coordinators, each one a person she had once helped, now helping others. Donna's legacy expanded into 3 more towns, each with its own Clark House. Joshua's pride. Joshua had fully recovered. He spent his days visiting families, shaking hands, telling his daughter's story. One afternoon, he sat with Sarah in the office, sunlight streaming through the windows. "You know what Donna would say if she could see this?" Joshua asked. Sarah looked at him. "What?" He smiled, eyes shining. "Daddy, you did good." Seen by the world, documentary filmmakers came. Cameras rolled as Sarah told her story simply. "A year ago, I had 8 hoboros and a choice. Feed my daughter or help a stranger. I chose kindness, and that choice saved both of us." The short film premiered online. 5 million views in a week. One day, Sarah walked back to the gas station where it all began. She asked the manager if she could place a plaque outside. He agreed. The plaque read, "Here, a small act of kindness changed everything. Donna's legacy." The same attendant who once told her to walk away approached quietly. His eyes were downcast. "I remember you. I told you not to help him." Sarah nodded. "I was wrong," he admitted. "I've followed your story, what you built. I'm sorry." Sarah gave him a small smile. "We all learn. That's what matters." This time, when she left that gas station, she wasn't walking away alone. She carried a family, a movement, a purpose. 1 year later, Clark House overflowed with people for its first anniversary. Families Donna's legacy had touched, bikers who volunteered, neighbours who had once pulled their children inside, now standing shoulder to shoulder, clapping and laughing. A banner stretched across the wall. 1 year of kindness. Sarah stood at the podium, Nancy smiling proudly in the front row. A year ago, she began, voice steady, I spent my last $8 on a stranger. I didn't know who he was. I didn't care. He needed help. That was all. Applause thundered. I was terrified, she continued. People told me I was making a mistake, and for a moment, I believed them. But I learned something that night. Kindness is never a mistake, even when it costs you everything, especially then. More applause. Tears glistened in the crowd. Joshua stood at the back, arms folded, smiling proudly. Afterward, a young woman approached, nervous, fidgeting, her voice soft. Hi, my name is Brenda. I don't know if you remember me, but you helped my mum 6 months ago. She had cancer. Sarah's eyes filled with tears again. She reached out, took Brenda's hand and smiled. Because she remembered. Because this ripple of kindness, was her life now. And it had all begun with 8 and a choice. Couldn't afford treatment, Brenda whispered, her voice trembling. Sarah blinked. Mrs. Rachel? Brenda nodded, tears spilling freely. She's in remission now. The doctors call it a miracle, but it wasn't luck. It was you. It was Donna's legacy. The two women collapsed into each other's arms, both sobbing with relief and gratitude. From across the hall, Mrs. Carroll made her way over. She wasn't the same woman who once stood on her porch, phone in hand, calling the police. Now she wore a Donna's Legacy volunteer badge around her neck. She touched Sarah's shoulder gently. Child, I owe you an apology. For what? Sarah asked softly. For judging you. For judging them. Her eyes flicked toward the bikers who now mingled easily with neighbours, carrying chairs, laughing with children, pouring coffee. You taught me it's never too late for a hard heart to change. Sarah squeezed her hand. You were only trying to protect me. I know that. Mrs. Carroll shook her head. Still, I was wrong, and I'm grateful you didn't listen. Another chance. That night, after the celebration ended, Sarah decided to walk home. She had a car now, but she preferred the quiet of the streets, the time to think. Halfway down the block, she spotted a young man slumped on the curb outside a gas station. Early 20s, Latino, his shoulders hunched, his face buried in his hands. Hey, Sarah said, approaching carefully. Are you all right? He looked up, eyes raw and wet. My car broke down. I don't have money for a tow. My little boy's waiting at daycare and I'm supposed to pick him up in 20 minutes. Without hesitation, Sarah dug into her purse and pulled out a $50 bill. She pressed it into his hand. He shook his head in disbelief. No, I can't take this from you. Yes, you can, she said firmly. Fix your car. Go get your son. He stared at the bill like it was something holy. But I don't even know you. You don't have to. She slipped him a Donna's Legacy card. When you're steady again, help somebody else. Pass it forward, and if you ever find yourself stuck, call that number. Tears tracked down his cheeks. I won't forget this, ever. Sarah smiled, her heart swelling. I know you won't. She walked on, lighter somehow, remembering when she had once been the one with nothing but desperation in her pockets. Now she was the one giving. The circle had come full. The ripple kindness multiplies. One spark lights another until whole streets glow. And Sarah believed, deep in her bones, that somewhere Donna was watching, smiling, proud. Her story had begun with a single moment in a gas station parking lot. 8 crumpled dollars. One terrifying decision. She could have kept walking. She could have bowed to fear. But she hadn't. That choice rewrote everything. The challenge. And now the question turns to us. Who in your life could use a hand? Who is waiting for your version of $8? Whether it's your time, your attention, your kindness. How many times have we looked at someone and judged too quickly by their jacket, their accent, their tattoos, their past? Sarah looked past all of that. She saw a man in pain. She saw a human being. What might change if we all did the same? Your turn. If this story touched you, don't just scroll on. Do something. Help one person this week. Share kindness. Leave a story of when compassion changed your life. Spread this message, because the more people who see it, the more hearts it can move. The world doesn't need more judgment. It needs more second chances. It needs more people willing to be someone's Sarah.